Five's new logo was back in a circle, and the letters were now in uppercase rather than lowercase. It wasn't a numeral, but it did say 5, and that's all that counted. It was designed by Dixon Baxi, who also designed the logo for Warner Bros. Streaming service Max and ITV's 2022 rebrand. It might be one of, if not my favourite logo to come from Channel 5's long line of logos. This is contributed by its idents actually being fun to look at, apart from the generic idents, which prided themselves on being simple animations on a grey background that were almost certainly used before the news. It's a bit like screensavers on Windows PCs, albeit very naughties, and basically fived to hell and back. Along with these standard generic idents, there are some idents involving paint and some flashing colours that are, for some reason, reminiscent of Five's early years when it was known as Channel 5. These idents, like the generic idents, were almost always used before the news, which is odd because these would have made good nighttime idents if Five had a nighttime strand, which they never had. There were also more creative and playful idents, the creme de la creme of the entire ident package. Invisible superheroes fighting in both a garden and a shipping container centre, a large set of hands messing around with shopping trolleys, using cranes as drumsticks against some gas storage tanks, and absolutely destroying the ever-loving shit out of a busy motorway, which is absolutely a spectacle to see and witness. Other idents included an animated representation of the food chain, a journey to a nightclub, also represented in animation, one involving a woman sneezing a bouquet of flowers out of her nose, bloody ouch, one where an animated cat tries to defeat a fly, a series of doodles, one where a man and a woman bump into each other and twist around each other, two stop-motion idents where a man and a woman meet against a bridge with a crocodile and two guys get into a turf war fight, all within the pages of a magazine, and a lovely ident where a town is represented in jelly form. All these idents are brilliant, and one of the best that Five has offered in quite some time, at least in my opinion. The creativity is bursting out of the pages, and it's fantastic to see in action. The use of animation in these idents is great. The contrast between the serious and non-serious idents works well, and overall it's just a great set to look at. This is why Dixon Baxi should, in fact, be the architects of their very own television channel filmed with arts programming, which sounds crazy, but considering the array of thumbs up in this packaging, the writing is very much on the wall. Noel Davies, the head of Five's creative services, said, "The new on-air identity reflects a constantly evolving, energetic and enthusiastic brand and tone of voice. There is real synergy on and off, which reflects a true collaboration between all our creative services and agencies." As far as I'm concerned, Five had their morale set for at least a good few years. Their image was spruced up and looking great, and even though their programs still weren't the greatest, their idents were certainly television gold. Until mid-2009. For some unknown reason, Five decided to ditch most of these fantastic sequences and instead bring back the concept of celebrity idents. What? But why? These sequences were more than enough to give Five an excuse to be one of the biggest creative powerhouses in the UK, but to ditch them? I have absolutely nothing against the celebrities, not at all, but the issue with them is that you can't use them against a program that isn't them. I mean, they just ditched the idea of a movie ident since the lowercase era came to an end in late 2008, but you couldn't use a celebrity ident into a Disney film. It wouldn't make sense, and things would only get worse. And worse, and worse. The logo was now getting bigger, and was being seen tilted to the side a lot more. They did it so often, in fact, that in 2010, a refresh was in order. Having thrown the last of their non-celebrity idents into the bin, where they would never see the light of day again, Five permanently tilted their logo into its side, and made it 10 times bigger than its original size. I don't know. There's something that doesn't sit right with me about these idents. Perhaps it's because the previous batch wasn't even used for a full year before they were getting the CAD, or maybe because it was so abrupt and so unexpected. Granted, before films, they usually would show the fresh up a pot ident that they would call the World of Five, which even then is like them going, well, if we can't choose what ident to show, we might as well cram them all into one. And as you can tell by the sudden picketing of these idents, I have a strange affinity for the 2008 idents, simply because they didn't tell you what the channel showed, it just gave you an idea of what the channel might show. Even in itself sounds like a strange concept for a channel package. Although, if I could praise the 2009/10 idents for something, it's that they do all have a decent production value and don't stick around too long. But that tilted 5 logo pushed me over the edge of acceptability. Behind the scenes, while the channel was exporting its shows, like adverts on YouTube, the RTL group, who owned the channel at the time, were busy selling to the channel to someone else, considering they were losing the channel around £37 million in damages, to which they clearly couldn't hold on too much longer. And who did they sell to? Northern and Shell, aka that company owned by the mafia associate and king of pornographic television, Richard Desmond. Desmond had purchased the channel simply because he had £103 million lying about, probably from all that porn he made money from. Indeed, Desmond was a pornographer, as much as he tries to deny it, and as much as he says he is wounded by those 12 letters, he was. His company owned many pay-per-view adult TV channels on cable, including the ridiculously scheduled Television X. He doesn't even like being called a former pornographer on Wikipedia. Clearly, this was the man to run Britain's 5th biggest terrestrial television channel. At 5, Desmond sacked 7 channel directors, leaving 2 left. He also dismissed, aka kicked him in the arse and told to piss off, 80 employees, leaving a rough estimate of 220 left, give or take. He was determined to increase the programme budget, all while trying to eliminate costs done by RTL. Desmond then turned his attention to the name of the channel itself, 5. Desmond himself said, "I prefer Channel 5 to 5, but we haven't met with the team yet to discuss these sort of details," basically assuming that he didn't like the brand name of 5. Let's just accept that the whole point of the channel being called 5 is because 5 is a brand, whereas Channel 5 is just a name. But Desmond had other ideas. Besides, he owned Northern and Shell, so who could stop them? Other than no one. By August, the rename back to Channel 5 was officially announced by Desmond after his newspaper, the shit-covered cum-soaked Daily Express, basically roasted the channel's concurrent name by saying, 5 what? 5 days of the week? Fingers? Basically showing a lack of understanding of this sort of thing. The name 5 had already been around for 9 years, but Desmond was going to shred those ongoing 9 years out of reality for good. But the renaming and subsequent rebranding wasn't going to happen for another 6 months, so they pulled an old trick of referring to the channel as Channel 5 instead of 5, a move that is basically opposite to what they did back in 2002. In fact, the budget constraints were so bad that at Christmas they had no choice but to repeat a 1986 edition of Top of the Pops to try and combat the issue, but likely did nothing but leave more house parties across the UK. Whether or not that was a good or bad thing, I'll leave for you to decide. Things were going to get cheaper by the minute, as Desmond's celebrity gossip wedding invader magazine branch OK were also going to create a new programme for the channel, entitled OK TV. If that wasn't traumatic enough, the removal of Milkshake from Fiverr, which was the renamed version of 5Life, would eventually occur at some point in the new year of 2011. A new look website was also the order of the day, still called 5.tv, until the channel rebrand would change it to channel5.com, which sounds more American, for some reason. Surely, if Desmond wanted to rename the channel as Channel 5, then he would run a public opinion poll on which people prefer, Channel 5 or 5. According to Discord, there's a mix of interchangeability, calling it both, and people who always call it Channel 5, and maybe even 5. Anyway, the Desmondization of 5 would take shape in February 2011, when the celebrity idents were dumped, as was the logo and the name itself, as a new logo was introduced. By this time, 5 had new everything. New name, new logo, new owners, and new wankers. It wasn't a total win, but a change, nonetheless. But would it turn out good or bad?